Okay, welcome everybody to another episode in our discussion, Health and Disease a Perspective. And we're sort of looking at the philosophy and the thought patterns behind how we look at disease and health, and we're just sort of working through this. We've looked at really the concept of how many energies are at work, what's actually going on when somebody's in what we call an unhealthy state, when they're not feeling well or whatever. And we're just trying to get to the bottom of what's involved here. And I think we're often revisiting concepts, so I'm just working through terms. So we wanted to look a bit today at the idea of design, that we're built in a certain way. So this has maybe some sort of theistic element, but that this, if you believe in creation, that we're created, we're designed, then that has some consequences for how we view these issues. Alex, what do you think?
Absolutely. I remember somebody saying to me many years ago that and in terms of what we spoke about last time, I mentioned about levels of energy, for instance, was that idea is above form. And when I say above, I don't mean in a sort of superior, inferior way. I just mean on a different level. So if you know how if we're up a mountain, we can see much more.
Yes.
If you use that pattern, if you like, on a psychological level, if we're in a different level in ourselves, we can see people often refer to it as the bigger picture. Mm-hmm. And I think when it comes to something as beautiful, extraordinary, amazing, and as complex as not just the human body, but nature per se, then it needs an entity, whatever you want to call it, God, creator, architect, designer, of something of a completely different order.
Yes.
Who as is often said, in their infinite wisdom, is responsible for how we work, what things that we take for granted.
Yes. Yeah.
So yes, I think design, we are part of a extraordinary design, yes, if you want to refer to it, as part of organic life on this planet, and there is a designer.
Yeah.
That's my feeling.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So I guess in the end of the day, I find myself proposing a model. I mean, that's my own tendency. I want to interpret things, and I'll put a model on it. And over the years, what sort of crystallized in me is a simpler model, I guess, than what the general assumption is. I don't think the general assumption is very carefully defined. I don't think anyone's really sat down and looked at what that assumption is about what's going on in ill health, as it's called. And again, this model is not something new. I'm not claiming to have thought it up, but I just find myself picking from what people have developed in earlier generations and saying, okay, well, this makes sense. And I wanted to use a term which was coined by Herbert Shelton, who was one of the main writers in what's called the hygiene movement. And he used this word biogony being a combination of bio, for life, the Greek word, bios is life, and agony, or agonizo, is the Greek word for striving. So that what most people would call a symptom is in Shelton's terminology a biogony. It's a product of life energy, a single life energy. We have life energy, we have vitality, and that is working to restore balance, homeostasis, the harmonious functioning of the organism. So that to me makes more sense. But it's something quite, I don't know, alarming for people or something. It's not, you know, certainly the idea that there is one energy of work, which is a positive energy. Therefore, if you're feeling sick, right, your body's doing something useful and you need to allow it as far as you can to do it. You might want to palliate it for some reason. You know, if you have to drive or something, then you might want to drink some coffee or, you know, something stronger. I don't know, because you have another factor which means you need to override something else, or, you know, you need to control. You can control these energies of the body but the actual positive purpose is something we shouldn't be stopping, as far as it doesn't interfere with our other aspects of our lives. So that's the sort of principle that I would apply. But I guess, you know, well, I'm sure a lot of people are not so enthusiastic about that. But what do you think about it, Alex?
Well, I think, to me, it's a very attractive idea, that there is, and I, by the way, I have to confess, I haven't read much or anything about the hygiene movement and
yes,
yet, but certainly something I'm just writing down.
It's worth looking into, definitely.
Worth looking into. But to me, it chimes, or it fits in very much with my sense that the body was designed with ways and means to correct itself, balance itself. So, for instance, one of the things which maybe we did mention it before, if you think in terms of biochemistry, so this is all been shown anyway.
Yes.
So really, fundamentally, we are a series of biochemical reactions. Whether we're asleep or whether we're aware of it or not, we are simply a continuum of biochemical reactions. And at the heart of those, one of the most important chemicals is our enzymes. Enzymes have a very complex nature, and there are chains of molecules, etc. But they combine in a particular way to form what's known as a primary, secondary, tertiary, and quaternary structures. Now, those structures are maintained in a fairly narrow temperature or conditions of temperature and pH, in other words, acid and base, or acid and alkali. So the body is contained. So the body functions around 37.5 degrees C, the internal, the core temperature, and the pH is somewhere just slightly below or slightly above 7, so it's neutral.
Yes.
If there's anything that happens that shifts that pH either too low, become more acidic, or too high, become alkali, or the temperature changes, there are mechanisms in the body to correct those, to bounce back against those changes.
Right.
So there is already a built-in mechanism to correct.
Yes.
So a bit like an aircraft course correcting, or psychologically when you're setting a plan, an aim and a goal, etc., you course correct, you review and course correct. That happens in the body in any case.
Yes.
And so the body is doing it. It is designed to do it.
Right.
Almost as though it was anticipating that there will be forces put upon it from its environment, etc., that could cause this to change, whether it's hot temperature, cold temperature, environmental toxins, pollutants, etc., whatever that may be. There are forces, dare I say forces, and I would agree, positive forces. It's a way of keeping the body in check, because those enzymes need to work in a particular way. Otherwise, things will just fall apart. But what happens is basically those structures begin to fall apart. They don't work anymore.
Yes.
So that's already known. Science has elucidated that, if you like, already determined that. However, the thing that I find so fascinating is that it's already there anyway. The scientists and the Western science has discovered it. They've not invented it, not made it up, not pioneered it. It just simply is. That's what really has been there since time immemorial.
Right.
So Why? Why has it been part of the design? Or why is that part of the design? Well, that's, to me, there's an intelligence. There's an intelligence that comes from something other than, than the physical body.
Yes.
And when, as you say, that what we describe as a symptom, and the classic one is when you have an infection. It seems counterintuitive, but what people have, they may have what's known as a febrile illness. In other words, they have a fever.
Yes.
And that is simply the body's way of basically trying to destroy the pathogen.
Yes. Yes.
So the body again has these. It's all part of this defense mechanism. And those, by the way, that's not just one thing it does. As you know, the immune system then kicks in and does its own things as well to basically, a highly complex, highly intelligent, very specific system of basically kicking out the invaders, if you like, or destroying or neutralizing the invader. So there is a phenomenal system there, and it is able to not only neutralize invaders, neutralize toxins, make changes if there are variations of the conditions under which the biochemistry of the body works.
Yes.
This is already there anyway. There are numerous examples of how the body basically is able to self-correct, self-balance, self-heal, if you like, and self-maintain.
Yes. Yes. So the sort of practical question that arises from all this is about, when to do something and when not, and we talked about this about, don't just stand there, do something. And it's this is the thing of how much intervention is really necessary. Obviously, there are times when you need to perhaps even interfere with this process because of some other interest, so there might be some, I don't know, some vomiting or something, some general condition, and you can suppress that process because you've got to do something, so, if you start with this principle that the actions of the body are positive and beneficial, then you'll say, well, as far as possible, you should just allow them to take their course, but you might want to manipulate them at certain points. But our reality is way out from that. Our reality in most cases is just whatever happens. The minute something happens, which is more than a sniffle, then, off you go to the doctors. You're expecting some sort of prescription. You're doing this, you're doing that, you're doing the other. And, it seems maybe not so, maybe it's counterproductive. What do you think?
Do you know what? It's a very interesting, intriguing, challenging, and certainly not an easy question to answer.
Yes.
But the thing is, immediately as you were saying that, I was just thinking of something. And if you have, for instance, somebody who say the head of the household, whoever that may be, the adult that is the one that is the working adult that is doing work that brings in whether it's money or food or harvest or whatever it is, sustenance to keep the family going.
Yes.
And that adult is dependent upon their physical body.
Yes.
And they have an accident, which involves, say, a broken bone. And if that bone, for instance, isn't set correctly, so that when it does heal, and remember the healing is done all by the body anyway, that say, for example, that say if it's something in the hand or in the elbow or in the knee or the hip or whatever it is, it heals, but it heals in not the best way.
Yes.
Which means it renders the rest of that limb or hand or foot or whatever it is not completely useless, but certainly not as effective.
Yes.
That person effectively becomes handicapped, and they're no longer able to look after their family, etc., or their community, or whatever it is. So the question is do you, when you said about intervention, do you do something about it?
Well, that's it. I mean, so obviously, you know, if we're talking about injury and the disfigurement, let's say, of the body, the disruption of its normal structure, let's say, well, then obviously it's a human task to address that and deal with that in some way to restore what we know the proper efficient structure of it is. But and that, you know, that for me, that's you know, what, let's call it accident and emergency medicine is something vital, and obviously, you know, but it's based on this, on, as you say, on the energy, the healing energy, which is working anyway, and you're just going there to sort of make sure that it does it in the right place at the right time and so on.
Exactly, and I think that's where I think often surgeons, when they're doing that, I've watched many programs where you're watching surgery being done, or in an A&E department or whatever it is, and I've heard surgeons casually say, "And then we'll let the healing, the body do its job." And I was thinking, exactly. There's some, to me, a semblance of humility there, that they're acknowledging that they can do so much.
Well, that's it. That's it. And I guess, yeah.
No, I was just going to say that to me, it's heartwarming that they appear to have suspended any imposition of ego and saying it's me doing.
Well, yes, that's it. And I guess what we're sort of pushing for, or sort of talking about, is, well, how, you know, how wide that, as you say, humility, and saying, yeah, well, actually, yeah, there's something going on here.
Yeah.
And that's what we need to, I don't know, what do we do? We allow, I mean, we allow it, we encourage it, we see it, we watch it, I don't know. But the question is, how much further should we expand that? And
well,
say, okay, well, you know, I'm coughing and I've got a fever. Great. You know, things are at work. There's nothing I can do about it. I just rest. I mean, rest obviously is the key thing. So you treat your body as you would anyway, hopefully, with good food, drink, environment,
absolutely,
and rest, and so much can just be dealt with by that. You know, just making sure your body is properly nourished and watered, hydrated, and then you know, and then it takes its course. You know, and yet, but this is what's not happening on the whole. You know, things which are not to do with the structure. There's no structural damage. There's nothing to be rectified that can be rectified manually by some human intervention. So it's just about, well, this thing's happening to me, but I want it to stop. These phenomena.
I think, and we may have touched upon this certainly at the beginning of our series of talks. This, to me, was epitomized with respect to COVID. Because I mean, you know, at the time before the vaccines got produced, etc., people were told, well, the way to stop the virus from spreading and to get infected and everything is not to be around each other and to wear masks and all this sort of thing. But nothing was mentioned about what we can do to support and strengthen our immune system. And I think there's 2 points there, and this again is something natural. Given the chance, the body will heal itself. Given the right conditions, it will work. The system will work as it's designed to work. And I think this is where, with our current lifestyles, which include diet, we have moved away from, to some degree, we've moved away from having optimal health, because things like the quality of the food that we take, and that's a whole another discussion. But broadly speaking, the quality is nowhere near as good as it used to be. The amount of stress that we're under, for various reasons, has reduced the effectiveness of our immune systems. The amount of water we don't drink, if you like. We need to hydrate. The amount of exercise we don't do doesn't help matters. The quality of our sleep. Sleep is really important as well to support a good immune system. So there's already a whole host of things we can do, which doesn't cost anything. And the only reason for saying to do them is because we're probably not doing them as well as they could be done.
Well, that's it. You know, these are the factors which really influence health. It's the ongoing behavior and environment, isn't it? I mean, that's the real issue about health. I mean, I would say, and so there's this key question: when you get these extraordinary actions of the body, well, what is that? I mean, and so we're told it's a disease. It's one of 10,000 or so diseases, and somebody is going to diagnose and say which one it is, and then you can stop it, apparently. So, I mean, again, I feel I'm repeating myself a lot, but to me, I don't see that. Seems a much more logical perspective, to say that it's a positive thing.
I couldn't agree more. I think, and again, we may have mentioned before, but if you take the word disease and then just split it into dis-ease,
yes,
what we were talking about earlier about the body's innate ability to self-correct, self-balance, self-support, or whatever it is, that's already there anyway. So if you take the word disease, dis-ease, something that's not, it's not easy, it's not ease, it's not in a position of ease. That's why it's not working properly. Now, interestingly, the Western medicine, I mean, I've heard that, you may have heard this before, that I've heard people say they've gone with some symptoms to their doctor, their consultant, whatever it is. They go and have a look at them and says, well, you're not too bad at the moment. Let's give it 6 months or a year until it's got much worse, and then we can do something about it.
Yeah.
I was thinking, good heavens, that's to me, the way in which Western medicine works is to work only on diseases. It doesn't seem to work on the let's help this get back to health.
Yeah, I mean, I think I find the chief challenge, one of the chief challenges I have with this view is people, there's a certain fear, right? There's a fear, for example, with temperature, there's a fear that the temperature will go up and it will destroy you, that it will burn you. So that this temperature is going to burn you up if it goes above. It's all right to have 38, 39, but if it's going 40 plus, it's some lethal forces there. And then the other one is, if it's something, maybe the swelling and stuff, well, if you don't stop it, it's going to stop you breathing or whatever. And people are so strongly concerned about this that you're seen as some sort of dangerous experimenter. How can you do that? And so in reality, we have to say, okay, well, this is I would do that, but there's so little example, if you like, of people just saying, okay, well, let it go, let the temperature just ride, let the swelling go. So this is the sort of unknown thing, to have a large scale response of inaction in terms of intervention. Okay, improving the environment, but not sort of trying to stop something. So I don't know what you think about that.
Yeah, I think there's a subtle difference. I think there's the difference between intervening in the sense of doing something against what the body is trying to do.
Yes.
Maybe intervention, not so much intervening, but assisting. So there's a difference between working against the body. And if you notice, I'm sure people may have asked themselves, have you noticed that a lot of the medications are grouped together, different brands, different types, but with the prefix anti.
Yes.
Antibiotic.
Well, antibiotic, yes.
Antiemetic.
Yes.
Anti-inflammatory, etc., etc. Whereas, so there's always something against the body.
Yes.
Rather than, well, something that works with the body.
Yeah. Yeah.
So you can group the types of intervention as either those that are working against the body or those that are working with the body. The ones, to my mind, I think this is what we're both saying, if you look at a more sort of organic, natural way, is you work with the body. You understand what the patterns, the laws under which the body is governed. And the structures, work with it. Work with what it is trying to do. Help it, support it. If somebody is, for example, take a very high temperature, somebody who's very febrile, who is getting to the point of being delirious and can't lift their head off the pillow, just you make sure that they've got plenty of fluids.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And just just in some cases, you have to sort of say, okay, let's just just hope that they're able to, their system can pull through it. We're doing all
Yes.
we can.
Yeah.
But just that is. I mean, I mean, a number of times I've seen. You sometimes used to get it in Hollywood films, etc., where you'd have the hero, or if you like, with the lady or whoever it was, or a child, just mopping the brow, and
Yes.
constantly sweating and everything, and
Yeah.
then the next morning, they suddenly the victim, the ill person, turned around and said, "Oh, what time is it? Oh, I'm hungry.
Yeah.
Oh, the fever's broken.
Yes.
Their system has worked." Well, that to me is just nature, and if you like, the designer's design.
Yeah, that's it.
Working,
Yeah.
you
So
know.
I think hopefully the sort of science will go in the direction of, well, how can we allow things to do more? Less aggressive intervention. Maybe that's what we can hope for. And so people feel more comfortable with allowing things run their course.
Well, yes, exactly. I think that's a that's a tall set. No, that's a challenge,
Yes.
because people have, as you said at the beginning, people are rushing to the doctor and their consultants and their
Yes.
surgeons saying, "You've got
Yes.
to do something for me, do something to this problem." Whereas
Yeah.
it's the often I do wonder whether the solutions are there already,
Yes.
but maybe are hidden in plain sight because we are so taken with this idea that we've got to do something against the body.
Yeah. And it seems to me tragic. I just feel it is tragic. I mean, that's my experience, that people are rushing, especially cancer. This thing that, cancer, it's like this whole, this is very much in something out there to get you category, isn't it? And and people, it's a sort of death sentence. This diagnosis. Well, people with this, they usually live 6 months or whatever. And impressionable people will sometimes just follow the doctor's prediction to the day, and pass out away on the exact day he said. So this is, as I said, I used the word tragic, and I think based in this fear, in this idea that there's some malevolent energy at work. So anything where people are delivered from that fear, because fear just doesn't help. It doesn't.
Well, it's interesting. It's interesting you say that, because cancer is one word. It's, as I'm sure, I mean, you're aware and would like to think that a lot of people realize that people may think cancer is something alien that comes from the outside.
Yeah.
There is a part of the immune system that is able to recognize self from non-self.
Yeah.
And the strange thing is that the cancer cells are part of our own makeup.
Yes.
They are cells that have gone rogue. There is a phenomenon in the human body that all the cells of the human body, they all have exactly the same genetic material, but they all are slightly different. They're all expressing different parts of the genome, if you like, the different parts of the genetic material. So that a skin cell will look very different to a nerve cell, that look very different to a gut cell, etc., to a brain cell.
Yes.
But they all have the same genetic material, and they all have the same markers. They'll have surface proteins that the immune system will know, oh, that's one of our boys. And the problem with the cancer, and they're all working, and this is the interesting thing, they are all working as part of a whole. They're all working to work for the whole. The cancer cell doesn't do that. The cancer cell...
Is it really something malevolent? I mean, that's my...
Right. Okay. It's malevolent in so much as it doesn't work for in community, as a community. That's the cancer cells are characterized by they first of all, cells of the body will replicate according to their what's known as their phenotype. In other words, what type of cells they are. Cancer cells will replicate. They'll do their own thing. That's number one. Number two, cancer cells won't stay where they're meant to be. They'll migrate.
Yeah, so this is, I mean, you know, I always try to put a simplest interpretation on it, right? So, you know, I would say, you know, these, whatever they are, these growths, right? Again, it's the action of the body, and it's working in the right direction, you know. And once you say it's not working in the right direction, every sort of panic and everything else comes on. But I mean, I would like to think that, I mean, I'm sure, put it this way, I'm sure that if I'd gone to a doctor 20, 30 years ago with because there was some lump or something, I'm sure I would have been diagnosed at some stage with this. But I would never dream of that. Never dream of it. But I just get on with life, and I'm still here, you know. And I know numerous people who did go and are now dead. So, you know, it's very, I sound just like some sort of populist speaker, you know, but I don't know. It just, that's my reality, you know. The whole thing, I see people, they go, and you know, the more money you have, the worse it is, because you go to these super clever doctors in America or whatever, and they find, and they can see all this, and then people are just in this world of fear and panic, and they're going to die sooner or later. No. But you know, if they just changed their lifestyle and got on with it, I don't think anything would happen. That's what I believe.
Yeah, three things to say there. Number one, you might be interested, and people might be interested to know that there is a very weak immune response to cancer.
Mm-hmm.
So it's weak because the cancer cells are one's own cells, but there is a weak immune response, and research more recently has tried to piggyback that immune response to try and basically work with the body to defeat the cancer. Okay, so there are rogue malignant, they're referred to as malignant cells or malevolent cells. There are rogue cells that are in our body, are malignant cells, but they get picked up by the immune system and destroyed. They're deemed as being no good. So there is a weak immune response. So this is why it's really important to keep our immune system strong. That's number one. Number two, in terms of keeping the immune system and the body strong, it's not just what I mentioned earlier about physical things we can do, but I also mentioned one other thing, which is not strictly physical, and that was stress. And one of the things that stresses people out is fear and anxiety. Mm-hmm. People have fear because they imagine things happening to them.
Yes.
So fear can add to the stress on the body, which in turn can add to a weakened immune system. So if somebody is perpetually frightened or terrified or imagining things are going to happen or whatever, and all these bad things are going to happen, guess what? It's quite possible they're going to happen.
Yeah.
So one has to watch, you know, our thoughts, our living forces. We have to be careful what we're thinking about. Funnily enough, we're fearing something might happen, but we don't want it because we don't want it to happen. But in fact, it then happens because we're thinking about it all the time.
Yeah.
So we have to watch what we're thinking about.
Yes.
And so I think, you know, and also the other thing that's really important, and this is a perennial issue and debate that goes on amongst clinicians, and that is what my wife told me, who's a retired clinician, is the debate between, do you tell somebody the bad news or don't you? Mm-hmm. And there is some suggestion that some people who are fine if they don't know something, as soon as they know it, they deteriorate.
Yeah, well, that's it. I mean, that's what I see. Yeah. I just see this black cloud hanging over people's head, and you know, this.
And they think they've given up. They think that's it. They've got the big C diagnosis, and they think that's it. We can't.
Yeah, well, that's it. And then, you know, so it raises lots of questions, doesn't it?
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, it's very interesting. But I think there's a lot. It's also subtle because there's a lot of things that we can do if only we could trust. Let's just say, go back to the idea of the designer or the architect.
Well, that's it. That's it.
That the designer has put things in place that can help us, if only we allow those things to help us without going against the way the body works, but working with it to support it.
Yeah, great. Well, good. I mean, I think we've opened quite some very nice topics there, which gives us material for reflection. until next time, and we can sort of digest this and pick out things maybe which we can take further. And it's great stuff. It's really important, and it's been a very useful discussion, I think.
Thank you very much, Peter.
Okay, well, great. And so we'll be up and again in a not too distant future.